Welcome back to Race Report, everyone. We have just completed the Dutch Grand Prix for 2022, so let's get stuck straight in, shall we? This is, of course, Max Verstappen's home race, and there is always a huge orange army. It's brilliant to see the fans out, so it was always a fantastic race. A bit of a hard one to overtake on, so it'd be more of a strategic battle, and I think we definitely saw that this weekend. So let's get stuck straight into qualifying. Qualifying was a fairly standard affair this weekend. Out in Q1, we had Latifi, Vettel, Ricciardo, Magnussen and Bottas. Out in Q2, we had Gasly, both the Alpines, Zhou and Albon. And at the end of the day, we had Verstappen qualifying on pole, but it was a very close one. It looked like it could have been a toss-up between Red Bull, Ferrari and Mercedes for the first time. But Verstappen did win out, and the Mercedes could not improve on their laps as Perez brought out a late yellow flag for a spin. We had Verstappen on pole, Leclerc P2 and Sainz P3. I will throw in a quick note about Lance Stroll. He had a very strong qualifying, and so did Vettel for a period as well. But unfortunately there was a technical issue on Stroll's car which stopped him going out in Q3, so he ended up in 10th. But he was looking very good up until that point. When it came to the race, I must admit I found the early going quite boring. Got a lot more fun later on, but the early going was a little bit boring. Verstappen and Leclerc got away well and just drove off into the distance. Hamilton and Sainz had a little battle for third off the line, and they did have a little touch. There was no problems between the two of them though. Norris got ahead of Russell, and Ocon and Stroll also made good moves at the start as well. Albon had the worst start. He slid back from 10th all the way to 16th, and I don't think we really got a good look at him for the rest of the race after that. A little bit of drama we did have on lap 1 was Magnussen sliding off and tagging the barrier. He was able to keep it going. He did put a little bit of dirt on the track, but no problems for anybody else in the end. A couple laps later, we saw Russell get past Norris as soon as DRS was enabled. He got him back for that one. But like I said, it was very quiet in the early portion of the race. Alonso did make a few good moves, taking both the Alpha Tauris. That was kind of like the highlight. We started seeing the first pit stops around lap 12 with Vettel, Ricciardo and Gasly. But it wasn't until lap 13 we saw the first car go onto the hards. Nobody predicted the hard tyres were going to be that useful, but Alonso went onto them on lap 13 and everybody's eyes were glued to see how those hard tyres would go. Sainz was the first of the front runners to pit on lap 15, and he had a nightmare pit stop. They literally just didn't have a tyre for him. It was a colossal failure yet again from Ferrari. 12 seconds it took him for that stop. He came out in 11th place, Ferrari not helping their drivers, and just for good measure they left a wheel gun lying around which Perez, also in the pit lane at the time, had to drive over. So a bit of a cluster there for Ferrari really. Leclerc pitted on lap 18. It was a much better stop from Ferrari this time. He's back on track in 4th place, and of course that inspired Verstappen immediately to pit the next lap. For the time being, Hamilton and Russell for Mercedes were 1-2 because they hadn't pitted yet. On lap 28, Verstappen overtook Russell for P2, and then he began chasing down Hamilton for the lead. But Hamilton wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of that. Hamilton pit on lap 30 and got the hard tyres on after all this learning that Alonso had been doing and a few other cars up and down the field at this point. They decided to go for the hard tyre and go to the end. He came out in 5th place, but everyone ahead of him still needed to pit at least once. Russell did the same on lap 32, came in, got the hard tyres, and he came out just behind Hamilton in 5th, with everybody needing to pit still. With all the first pit stops completed, we had a top 3 of Verstappen, Leclerc and Perez, but all of those guys needed to stop at least once more. Mercedes at that point were legitimately looking like they could win the race. They were legitimately looking like they could get a 1-2 as well. It was very exciting. Hamilton and Perez ended up having a good battle for a couple of laps there, and Hamilton getting that 3rd place off Perez on track. Russell did the same and took Perez for P4 immediately afterwards. Perez then pitted for his hard tyres on lap 41 after getting passed by both those Mercedes. He comes out in 7th, but now doesn't have to stop again. But almost immediately after this is where the race got really good, honestly, in my eyes at least. Drama started. Tsunoda stopped out on track, saying his tyres had not been fitted correctly, And he stopped there for legit like a few seconds, maybe even a minute. And the team then said, "Tyres are fine, mate. What are you chatting about?" So he get going again slowly. He didn't get out of the car. He got going again slowly, but it was very, very strange because obviously the driver knows if the tyres are on correctly, right? He's the one driving it. The team said it's fine, so he gets going again, drives around very slowly, but this did cause like Red Bull and Ferrari to rush out into the pit lane in case a safety car happened and they needed to pit their drivers. And it was heart in the mouth time, especially for Mercedes fans, because of course the one advantage they had was that they could go to the end and get that pit stop advantage on people. But with Tsunoda going again, it looked like that had been neutralized and it wasn't going to be a problem. With that in mind, no safety car and all that, Leclerc came in for his second stop on lap 46. That dropped him down to 4th place, but he was ahead of Perez, which was important for Ferrari. But then, just as you think everything's fine, Ferrari have done their pit, Tsunoda, who had also pitted and come out again, reported problems yet again. So he had to stop out on track just a few minutes after he reported that he had to stop on track the first time, and a virtual safety car was deployed. So the big question here was, can Verstappen pit, get new tyres, and keep his race lead? And the answer was yes. He made the pit stop on lap 49, kept his lead, went to the hard tyres so he knew he could go to the end of the race. Exact same compound as the Mercedes, which were his big threat at that time. But Mercedes, you know, did what they needed to do, honestly. Rather than just leaving their guys out to, you know, fight Verstappen on the same tyre compound, just older, they brought both Hamilton and Russell in for fresh medium tyres to counter. It probably wouldn't have guaranteed them the 1-2 that they were going for before, but at least they had a faster tyre compound in which to fight with. So at this point in the race, everyone, I think in the top 4 or 5 is actually on fresh tyres. Verstappen is in P1 with the hard tyres. Hamilton and Russell are P2 and 3 on the medium tyres. So the VSC ended on lap 50. We had 23 laps to go, and it's all about seeing if the Mercedes could hunt down Verstappen with their mismatched tyre compounds for the win. But then literally the very next note I have is Bottas stops out on the pit straight, and we get a full safety car deployed. Yeah, I told you it was going to get fun at this end bit, didn't I? There's a little bit of drama as Sainz appeared to overtake Ocon on the pit straight, but we don't know if it's before or after a yellow flag. So there's a little bit of drama there. It wasn't really addressed during the race, at least. But something that did happen is Verstappen pitted again, this time for soft tyres, to try and take away that tyre advantage that Mercedes had. Both Mercedes cars initially stayed out, so we had a Mercedes 1-2 with Verstappen in 3rd, but both the Mercedes had older tyres. Russell in his Mercedes then asked if he could pit and get soft tyres, and Mercedes agreed. So as the safety car is taking them through the pit lane to avoid the incident, Russell dives into his pit box, gets his soft tyres, and comes out in 3rd place. But Hamilton is not happy with that. He didn't get to pit. And he's not happy because now there's no buffer between him and Verstappen is on fresh, soft tyres, whilst Hamilton is on used medium tyres. So the safety car ends on lap 60, so we have 12 laps of racing to go. But it doesn't take that. It doesn't take long at all. Verstappen gets a brilliant draft through the final corner and overtakes Hamilton almost immediately on the pit straight and takes the lead. Sainz also overtakes Perez for 5th place at the same point, and that was a good move from Sainz. At this point, Hamilton's raging, naturally so. It's exactly the same thing that happened in Abu Dhabi last year with a safety car and mismatched tyre compounds happening to him again. But it doesn't stop there for Hamilton. Russell also overtakes him for P2 on lap 64, and he continues his slide backwards as Leclerc also overtakes him for P3. At this point is where we hear about an unsafe release penalty for Carlos Sainz. Again, Ferrari and their pit stops just can't help Carlos Sainz, can they? They just keep getting in his way. He's given a 5-second penalty for an unsafe release, which eventually drops him from his 5th place that he earned by overtaking Perez all the way down to 8th. But at the end of the day, it is Red Bull's day, it is Max Verstappen's day. On his home Grand Prix, Max Verstappen wins the Dutch Grand Prix. It's George Russell who finishes P2 and Charles Leclerc P3. Hamilton does end up P4, which going into it, you might have said it should take a P4, but as the race unfolded, I don't think he'd be happy with that at all. It was once again a messy day for Ferrari with their strategy, with their pit stops. They just kept screwing over Carlos Sainz over and over again. And it was a messy day for Mercedes as well, where, you know, one or two strategy calls could have ended up winning a race, their first race of the season. However, they did not. Red Bull got every single call right, and Max Verstappen drove brilliantly once again to end up on top. It wasn't a great race overall for on-track action, and it was very unpredictable there toward the end. It was all strategy based though, so if you're a fan of how the strategies play out, this is a good race to watch. If you're a fan of on-track action, not one of the highlights, I don't think. But I quite enjoyed it. What did you guys think? Did you enjoy the late drama like I did? Let me know in the comments. Let me know over on social media at Race Report Pod, and I will catch you in the next one.